May 1945. The war is over. Hitler is dead. Germany has surrendered. Every Nazi soldier is either captured, killed, or running. The Allied forces have won. But somewhere deep beneath the Atlantic Ocean, a German submarine is still moving. No orders, no destination, no communication with the outside world. For 66 days straight, this submarine stayed completely underwater, breaking a world record, heading toward one single place: Argentina. When it finally surfaced and surrendered, American intelligence officers rushed to the docks. They weren't there to arrest the crew. They wanted to know one thing: what was inside that sealed cargo hold? And what they found, or rather what they didn't find, has fueled one of the most explosive conspiracies in modern history. A mystery so disturbing, so carefully documented, and so stubbornly unsolved that even today, in 2025, historians and forensic scientists cannot fully close the case. This is the real story of U-977, and once you hear it, you will never look at the end of World War II the same way again. The submarine that refused to surrender. To understand why U-977 matters, you need to understand what was happening in the final days of the Third Reich. April 30th, 1945. Inside his underground bunker in Berlin, Adolf Hitler reportedly put a pistol to his head and pulled the trigger. Eva Braun, his wife of less than 40 hours, swallowed cyanide. Their bodies were burned in the courtyard above, according to Nazi officers who claimed to be witnesses. 8 days later, Germany officially surrendered. The war in Europe was over. Every German submarine received direct orders from Admiral Dönitz: surface immediately, fly a black flag, and surrender to the nearest Allied vessel. Most did, but U-977 did not. On May 2, 1945, just 2 days after Hitler's alleged suicide, U-977 quietly slipped out of Kristiansand, Norway. Its young commander, 24-year-old Oberleutnant Heinz Schäfer, gathered his crew and gave them a choice: surrender or sail south. 12 crew members chose to leave. They were quietly dropped off on the Norwegian coast in rubber dinghies. The remaining men stayed. And what followed was one of the most extraordinary voyages in naval history. For 66 consecutive days, U-977 traveled completely submerged, using snorkel technology, breathing tubes that allowed the diesel engines to run just below the surface. No Allied radar could detect them. No Allied plane could spot them. They were invisible. They crossed the equator. They hugged the west coast of Africa. They pushed south through the Atlantic. And on August 17, 1945, more than 3 months after Germany's surrender, they surfaced at Mar del Plata, Argentina, and turned themselves in. The question that exploded across the world was simple: why? What the Allied interrogators found. Within hours of U-977's surrender, the crew was seized by Argentine naval forces. Within days, they were handed over to American intelligence. The U.S. Navy wasted no time. Interrogators sat Schäfer and his crew down in separate rooms and asked the same questions over and over. Did you carry Adolf Hitler to Argentina? Did you carry Nazi gold? Did you carry senior Nazi officials? Were you part of a secret escape convoy? Schäfer's answer was always the same: no, we were just trying to survive. We didn't want to rot in an Allied prison camp. We made a desperate run for freedom. The official U.S. Navy report, filed September 19, 1945, found no evidence of secret passengers. No gold, no hidden compartments. No unusual cargo. But here is where the story gets deeply complicated. The same report also contained a critical inconsistency. Schäfer claimed the submarine traveled 66 days completely submerged. But the U.S. Navy report makes no mention of this record-breaking dive. Instead, it suggests U-977 actually stopped at the Cape Verde Islands and spent significant time on the surface. 2 completely different voyages. 2 completely different stories. Someone was lying. And that single contradiction opened a door that historians have been walking through ever since. The cargo hold and the sealed mystery when Argentine naval officers first boarded U-977. They conducted a full inspection of the vessel. What they reported was routine, standard equipment, standard crew quarters, standard torpedo storage. But several independent investigators who later reviewed the inspection reports noticed something unusual. The rear storage compartment, a sealed secondary hold, received almost no documentation in the official Argentine inspection records. No detailed inventory, no photographs, no weight measurements. For a vessel that had just completed a 3.5-month unauthorized voyage from a defeated nation. That level of incomplete documentation was, to put it mildly, suspicious. Before Allied forces could conduct their own full, independent inspection, something else happened. U-977 was towed to Boston. And on November 13, 1946, just 1 year after arriving in America, the submarine was deliberately used as a target in torpedo firing exercises off the coast of Cape Cod. It was sunk. Every physical piece of evidence, every compartment, every sealed hold, every last rivet of that submarine now sits at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. Gone forever. The question investigators are left asking is this: was the decision to sink U-977 so quickly before any serious forensic investigation could be completed a coincidence, or was it a deliberate erasure? The conspiracy that wouldn't die in 1947, a Hungarian journalist named Ladislas Chabot published a book titled Hitler is Alive. The central claim U-977 and its companion submarine U-530 had transported Hitler himself, or at the very least his ashes and top Nazi officials, to South America. The book caused an international sensation. Argentina at the time was run by President Juan Perón, a leader with documented sympathies toward Nazi Germany. Perón's government had quietly opened its borders to hundreds of Nazi war criminals through underground escape routes known as ratlins. SS officers, war criminals, scientists from the weapons programs. Adolf Eichmann, one of the primary architects of the Holocaust, lived peacefully in Argentina, under a false name for 15 years before. Israeli intelligence finally captured him in 1960. If Argentina was sheltering men like Eichmann, could it have sheltered someone far more important? The theory spread and grew. Eyewitness accounts of questionable credibility emerged from small, Argentine towns claiming a man matching Hitler's description had been seen alive years after the war. An FBI file from 1945, declassified decades later, showed that American agents were actively investigating reports that Hitler had escaped to Argentina. The file was real. The investigation was real. Whether the reports were real is another question entirely. What science says here is where the story turns from conspiracy to evidence. In 2018, a team of French researchers gained access to something extraordinary: Adolf Hitler's teeth. The dental remains had been preserved in Russian archives since 1945, captured by Soviet forces who stormed the Berlin bunker. The scientists conducted a detailed forensic examination. They compared the teeth to dental records from Hitler's personal dentist, Dr. Hugo Blaschek, who had treated Hitler 4 years before the war ended. The findings were unambiguous. The teeth matched perfectly. The bridgework, the crowns, the unique dental patterns, all consistent with records created before 1945. The researchers concluded with scientific certainty that Adolf Hitler died in Berlin on April 30, 1945. Furthermore, the timeline destroys the U-977 theory on its own logic. Hitler allegedly died on April 30th. U-977 left Norway on May 2nd, 2 days later, from a completely different country, surrounded by collapsing infrastructure, Soviet encirclement, and Allied air patrols. There was no physical way to get a passenger from a burning Berlin bunker to a Norwegian submarine port in 48 hours in the final days of the war. The science says Hitler did not escape on U-977, But the science does not explain why the submarine ran. It does not explain the inconsistent voyage records. It does not explain the incomplete cargo inspection. And it does not explain why the United States sank the vessel within a year of capturing it. What Scheffer himself said. Heinz Scheffer, the young commander of U-977, was released from Allied custody in 1947. He returned to Argentina in 1950, and in 1952 he published his memoir, U-977 to 66 Days Underwater. In the book, Scheffer wrote with bitter sarcasm about the accusations. He described the interrogations as humiliating. He called the Hitler escape theory absurd. He said his only motivation was survival. He feared the Allied Morgenthau Plan, which German propaganda had told him would turn Germany into a wasteland and enslave all German men. He wanted freedom, nothing more. But even Scheffer's supporters acknowledged something strange. His memoir and the USS Navy interrogation report describe two fundamentally different voyages. Key details, dates, locations, surface time do not match. Scheffer died in 1979, taking whatever private version of the truth he held with him to the grave. The bigger picture. The story of U-977 is not just about one submarine. 'Tis about what happens when a regime collapses, when an empire built on terror suddenly vanishes overnight, and powerful people are desperate enough to do extraordinary things to survive. Hundreds of Nazis did escape justice. That is documented historical fact. They used Ratlins through Italy and Spain. They used false Red Cross documents. They bribed border officials. They disappeared into South America, the Middle East, and even the United States under assumed identities. The question U-977 forces us to confront is not whether Hitler escaped. Its science has answered that. The real question is, what else was on that submarine? What was in that sealed hold that received so little attention in the inspection records? Was it documents? Was it stolen art? Was it Nazi gold? Funds meant to finance a Fourth Reich from exile? Was it a senior official whose name history has simply forgotten? We will never know. Because the Americans sank the submarine before anyone could look closely enough, U-977 sits today at the bottom of the Atlantic off the coast of Cape Cod. Rusting, silent, still sealed. Whatever it carried, whatever secrets are locked inside those corroded steel compartments will remain exactly where they are, in the dark, under the water. History has given us the headline that Hitler died in Berlin. Science has confirmed it. But history has also shown us, again and again, that the full story of the Third Reich's final days is far stranger, far darker, and far more complex than any single headline can capture. The war ended, but the secrets didn't. If this story made you think, if it made you question what you thought you knew about World War II, then hit that subscribe button right now. Every week, we go deeper into the hidden history that mainstream textbooks skip over. The untold stories, the sealed files, the questions that powerful people hoped you would never ask. And leave a comment below. Do you think something was hidden on U-977? Tell us what you believe, because the debate is still very much alive. The subscribe button is right there. Don't miss the next one.